Well, I'd like to call the Tuesday, March 19th Monmouth City Council meeting to order. If we could have roll call. Phyllis, please.
Counselor Belts is excused. Counselor Carey is excused. Counselor Lopez.
Here.
Counselor Sharmer.
Here.
Counselor Schenkel.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Silvernagel.
Here.
Mayor Kuntz is excused.
Okay, let's all rise for the flag salute. And Byron, could you lead us in?
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Okay, well, welcome everyone to the Monmouth City Council meeting. Comments from the community are entertained during the time designated under citizens' comments. If you wish to speak to the council, please put a comment card that's turned in, that's in the back, and turn it into the city recorder, or here at the dais to the mayor, or I guess to me in this case tonight, beginning of the meeting here shortly, if you could. Speakers' comments in this form are limited to 3 minutes, but the council welcomes additional information in writing. Typically, a speaker's comment is taken under advisement to allow time for the council to review an issue. However, the mayor or councilors may ask a speaker for additional information or may convey to the speaker some information that addresses their comments. Please note on the speaker card if you would like to receive follow-up communication, and if so, what avenue is preferred. Thank you for your attendance at the meeting of the Monmouth City Council this evening. Okay. Consent calendar consists of 2 sets of minutes. We got minutes for the general meeting on March 5th, and we have for the same night, March 5th, the council work session. And I don't know if there's any comments or anything. If not, I would entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved in second that we approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I will abstain as I was not here that evening.
Abstention, okay. They still pass, so that's great. Thank you so much. And thanks, Phyllis, for getting those to us. Okay, moves us to our presentation. Sheriff Garten.
I'm his protection.
Excellent. Thank you both for being here this evening.
Thank you for allowing us to come and talk for just a few minutes about an important issue we have that kind of affects all of us. 2015, the voters passed a public safety levy that allowed us to hire 12 patrol deputies, 5 in the jail, 3 attorneys, prosecutors, and 2 legal support staff, and then also for the rental of 2 juvenile detention beds. So we were working 10 hours a day. This allowed us to hire those folks, get us back to 24/7, restored our drug team, which is an interagency team as well. So it took us about a year and a half or so to hire everybody, get everybody trained. We're full staff now. That levy allows for a tax of up to 45 cents per thousand. On average, since it passed, we've the commissioners, I keep saying we, but the commissioners assessed on average 33 cents per year. So we haven't reached the cap. We did receive some federal dollars for the timber, O&C timber funds, and so it did offset that. It's kind of sporadic, not sure if it's going to continue. It was just, quite sporadic. And the dollar amount fluctuated every time. So what we're asking is in May, this renewal will be on the ballot. And the renewal basically is, and it is just a renewal. It is an extension of what we currently have. The cap is reduced to 42.5 cents, so down 2.5 cents. No reduction in services. It is a 5-year levy. So this is a year early, though. That is the only kind of difference in this. And the reason for that is because of the amount of dollars that we've spent hiring and training everybody. It's an enormous amount of money. It's about $150,000 to train one person, one deputy for the first year. And so that's a lot of money that we've spent taxpayer dollars on, and we want to protect that investment. I don't want anybody to wait up until the last minute and then leave and go to another agency, and then leave us with nothing and us having to go out and try to hire somebody else. So if we go out a year early, it allows them to plan within their family, because most of the folks we have are young, new, starting families, having kids, those kinds of things. So they want to feel secure. Plus, I just don't want, that waiting up until the last minute. We did that in 2015 because in 2013, the first levy that they went out for failed. And so we had people leaving left and right between 2013 and 2015, and it left us with 7 people on patrol. And I was one of those 7. And so I understand how that I understand that personally. So it was a rough time. So there's a lot of stats on this flyer that I can bore you with stats, but the simple thing is we are safer because of this. Just one thing that I could point out is traffic, and whether that's DUI arrests, crashes that are down about 50% from where they were in 2016. DUI arrests are way up, more than I've seen in a long time. And the reason is because we have people out on the road. We have people out there stopping cars, writing citations, giving warnings. More traffic enforcement is less crashes. That's something that is across the board, always going to be based on history across the U.S. So that is one thing. We are safer just because of that. There's multiple things, but that's one thing that's tangible for people. So we have been able to in the district attorney is out on a call right now, so I'm going to try to fill in for him right now. So some of the things that he is able to do basically with the prosecutors is that he can handle more cases, about 800 more a year with those 3 prosecutors that wouldn't get prosecuted otherwise. And so that is a huge thing, because you think about the number of arrests that we had back in 2015 to now, we're about 1,300 a year. And so we have a lot more cases going to the district attorney's office, and so does all the other police departments as well, and the state police. So they need that volume up there, and they're able to do all those things, do great work. They're able to help in prevention programs too, like our jail treatment program, our mental health court, drug court, those kinds of things. So they are doing a lot of work that we wouldn't be able to do without, and basically finishing the work that we start on the road, any of the police officers start. So, Commissioner, do you have anything?
Well, for me, I think it's just about livability and that people feel safe. And not just in the county, but in the cities. It's about the mutual aid that the sheriff's office has with the city of Monmouth, with the city of Independence, the city of Dallas. It's just the livability of why people come and live in Polk County, because they feel safe. I've always felt safe, and I live in the country, but the fact is, my mother's 85 and lives in Monmouth. My mother-in-law is 91 and lives in Independence. That's always been a concern of mine. I want them to feel safe when they're driving through the city or when they're driving outside of the city limits. And with regards to the other items here at the county, we have a jail. When you commit a crime, you're going to jail, okay? And people in Marion County realize that. If they're arrested over here in Polk County, they know they're coming to the Polk County Jail, and it's not gonna be a book and release kind of a deal where they're released before the police officers have finished their paperwork. And we want to keep it that way. We want to deter them from coming into Polk County. And as we get a little bit bigger, it's nice to have all these officers out in the road. And I appreciate what Aaron does. I mean, if we didn't have folks prosecuting crimes, you'll see all the information here. People get a little more free about how they act without any police force out there. And so I think it's extremely important, especially the way things are, and they have been. I mean, there's a lot of criminals out there that I was always unaware of before I became a county commissioner. But you see the police records each and every day, and things happen all the time. I mean, we had here in Monmouth, what was it, a couple weeks ago, where they had the robbery of the little store right here, okay? Well, it wasn't just the Monmouth Police Department was there. It was the Independence Police Department, the Polk County Sheriff's Office, and that's what makes people feel safe. and I think it's important as we move forward. And the other thing I'd just like to add is, although we were able to tax 45 cents, we always said before that if we got any federal timber, that we would always offset that. And we wanted to keep our word, not only for ourselves, but for other folks as they come beyond us, other commissioners, that we don't want to lose the confidence of our constituents. And I think that's important. When we say it's going to be 42 cents, if we get federal money in, we're going to offset that, because we want to make sure that people have our trust. And I think that's extremely important, especially the way things are in the country right now about people trusting or not trusting. We want to make sure that we have the trust of our community members.
That is something with Sheriff Wolf, when he was here before, he was the one out making promises, and it doesn't matter to me who made them, they were made, and the trust in who we are, that if I didn't come through with that, who am I then? I'm not, if I gotta live up to that, so that's not who I am. I'm someone that's gonna hold up our end of the bargain, so. Does anybody have any questions about the levy? And the reason we're here, though, is really to just ask for public support if that's something you guys are willing to do.
This is the second time I've heard it. I don't have a question, but I would like to make a comment that there are a number of Polk County Sheriff's deputies who live in our neighborhood, and to a person, every single one says that working for you has been the biggest joy of their life, that you're a great person to work for. So thank you for that. That's all part of what makes us safe, is that kind of attitude among our officers. So thank you.
Other questions? Brian?
What will be the term of the levy?
It would be 5 years.
5 years.
And one thing I forgot in terms of, so since this is a year early, the 5th year, if this new one were to pass, when it passes in May, the 5th year of the first levy just goes away. There's no overlapping or anything of the two levies. So 5th year goes away, and this one starts right up against it.
And it has been great having the way they cover for each other and the communities.
Every
See
day.
it all the time,
Every
yeah.
day.
Yep, it's
Yeah.
great, so
good.
support all directions. So
And I have another
Go ahead.
question. So why the levy? Why isn't this a permanent part of the budget? Why do we have to go, I assume there's a.
Measure 50.
What's that?
Measure 50.
Oh, is it Measure
Yeah.
50?
yeah.
Well, and the loss of timber revenue. We used to get $2.5 million a year
Right.
for the ONC land, and then federal government decided that we're not going to get that anymore. And so that's where we're at. That's where we were in a bind 5
Our
years
hands
ago.
are tied.
Pardon me?
Our hands
Our
are
hand-
tied on this.
And we can't adjust our permanent rate at the
Right.
county. We're at $1.71, and, that's one of the lowest ones around. And so, when you have to cut, and the sheriff's office is about 67% of the
Somewhere around
general
there.
fund budget, so that only leaves a little bit left for everything else, and so, but public safety is our number one priority, and that's where we're at now. We're between a rock and a hard spot 5 years ago. We just kept, I remember when I first took office, we just kept cutting people everywhere, not just in the police department, the sheriff's office, but everywhere else, because that revenue had dwindled and dwindled and dwindled, and we don't have the opportunity to be able to raise extra income any other way than going out for a levy. I mean, we've got a pretty tight budget as it is.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, whether the council wants a resolution drafted. Dallas passed one last night, a resolution endorsing the measure. I know you've done that before. No recommendation, just wanted to lay that out to you in case you wanted to make a decision on that tonight, maybe bring them back.
I would be fine with that, but what's the council?
I'll make a motion, and
Okay.
I'll move that we direct staff to prepare a resolution supporting the passage of the levy.
I'll
In
second.
May.
Okay. Any additional discussion?
One point of discussion. I did take part in a police ride-along. This was toward the end of last year, was able to see how the different agencies worked in concert firsthand. It was a relatively slow evening, during the late fall, early winter. But there was a lot of cross communication, and those opportunities for cross communication, I feel, are incredibly important. Whether the call ends up being something big or whether it ends up being a non-issue, and I really appreciate your working closely with our police department, and am happy to support this.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, let's move it to a vote then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. We'll have to get the vote out for May 21st.
You can go on a ride along around the end of July. It's always busier.
Busier then.
I'll take you up on that.
Great, thanks. Okay, let's see, moving to reports. So mayor's report. The mayor's not here, but I do have one item I'd like to share. Some of us were at the Community Awards Banquet on March 8th, and the Distinguished Service Award went to Chief Darrell Talon, very deserving, and great to have and see him recognized. And so I know the mayor was there as well, and a couple of us were, so that's the one item I thought I could report anyhow. Let's see, moving to reports of council representatives. Councilor Schinkel, I think you said you might not have a report
Yeah,
tonight?
there was a
Parks and Rec?
conflict. My daughter's choir concert was that night. so
Okay, very good.
I was not able to attend.
Community announcements. Do we have any community announcements?
Oh, you go ahead, go ahead.
After you.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say that on Thursday, the senior center, is that what you were going to say? You can get the best soup and pie in town, and I don't remember the price. I think it's $6.
That's what I recall.
$6, and you can get a nice bowl of really delicious soup and a slice of my pie. And if you don't want my pie, you can have someone else's. So Thursday, senior center.
Great.
I do understand that if you're not able to be present in person, that you can always ask a friend or a neighbor to pick up your soup and pie for you. And I do plan on doing that myself. I'm pretty excited about the pie.
Very good. And I think we have a Power and Light ribbon cutting tomorrow at 1:30, so that would be another announcement. Any others?
One more thing, calling out something that happened this past week, but just wanted to thank all of our wonderful volunteers in all capacities throughout the city. We had our volunteers a volunteer appreciation dessert this past week, and it was well attended, and really it went to drive home what a great group of people we have working together to make this the wonderful place that it is. Also, I'd like to see that room even more full next year. You can pick up volunteer applications either at the library or at City Hall.
Excellent.
And thank you to Phyllis for all her work of putting that together for us.
Yes, thank you, Phyllis.
Great. Okay, city manager's report. Scott, please.
Yep, thank you. So a couple of development items. Carl's Jr. is targeted to go at April 15th. So that's just around, they're doing pretty well on that. And then a couple items on campus. The campus is always regenerating, doing new buildings, revising. They're going to be working on the information technology building pretty soon, do a remodel there. And then the old military academy is going to go through a conversion process. They're still working through details, but that might become kind of a welcome center, a place potentially even where like if a family is doing a visit and they it's too far to drive, they might be able to stay there overnight, might be able to have groups come in. It's obviously set up like a barracks right now because it was a military academy, so it's all getting through the details of how to make that shift, but good project there. Other note, housing needs analysis, open house is tomorrow night, and that's be 6:15 here, basic presentation, then kind of a walkabout, make comments to the consultants, just answer questions, and people can kind of come and go on that one if they don't make the initial presentation. And then Public Works, a couple items that are interesting. We're recruiting right now for our project coordinator position. We had a retirement, and we also had a retirement on the Public Works kind of line crew. And we're doing pretty good on the project manager, but interesting one, just how the economy is going. We used to get toward 25, 30 applicants for the utility position. We got 6 this time. And so it's, they're not too sure they're gonna be able to work with the current pool, or might have to go out again, but just another emanation of, what our employment market's doing, which is great for people that are trying to be employed, so, harder for employers, though, so. Then a couple of notes coming forward. The sidewalk inventory, we got that in pretty good shape. It was gonna take quite a bit to get into a final form, but I'm working with Russ on, can we at least just do something more scaled back, a more topical look, just what's the sense of scale without getting down to the really good detail mapping, the ability to draw information, database type stuff. So we're probably pretty close on that. And then the stormwater, we did our kickoff meeting. They're actually in process on that. They're gonna come back one of the 2 April meetings, give you an overview on that, and let you know what the process is gonna look like, what they're working on, what the main, topic points are gonna be going forward. And then likewise, the City Hall volunteer project, I said there's a good chance that, remodeling might be the same price as building new. That was confirmed, and so we're gonna come back and actually ask your favor on this one to say, could we just scratch the remodeling options and just focus on the 2 options, which would be standalone, do something here like remodel, brand new building, or an entire remodel that would be everything. And so we want to get your direction on that. It's a deviation from the original project. So our consultants will be coming down to walk you through all the details on that.
Excellent.
So a couple of good topics coming forward near future.
Excellent.
Coming to a council chambers near you.
Thank you so much, Scott. Okay. Reports from boards and commissions. And our first one tonight is the library board. If we could get folks to come forward. Thank you both.
Thought we were gonna be at the back table like we usually are.
A little change of pace. So.
Yeah. So, okay. Those of you who are at the volunteer recognition probably heard a bunch of stuff. There's been a lot of work in the last year with the NASA at My Library programs, and they have been extremely successful and extremely popular. And that's going really, really well. The wine and poetry tasting last April was good. We're planning on doing that about every other year, just to make sure people don't get wine and poetry out. Summer reading programs will be happening again. Last year, we had Tuesday evening programs for families, and that allowed a lot of working parents to come and attend with their children and such. And that seemed to be fairly successful. And we had a great turnout on one of the hottest and smokiest days of the summer for the finale. There was a family picnic. They had to change it from an outdoor event to an indoor event because of the weather. And everything went well. Everybody adapted really well. Chris can talk a little bit about the Association for Small and Rural Libraries Conference.
It was one of the best conferences I've ever attended, mostly due to the fact that it's all focused on small and rural public libraries, as opposed to other, I've been to the ALA, American Library Association Conference, and that's covers every form of librarianship, and it's huge. This was much scaled down. It was actually much more relevant. And again, it was one of the best conferences I've ever attended. I hope to be able to attend next year. Really a lot of good information to help with planning and kind of shifted my perspective on a few things, and network with some people that I've been in contact with, and it's actually an organization that I hope to become more involved with in the future, due to just how good of an experience I had at that conference.
Yeah, and the library board would like to encourage, as you're working on the budget, to keep in the development funds for professionals to keep up to date, to go to conferences like this, bring back stuff. There's so much changing so fast that, being able to attend things like that can be really important for our staff. And a couple of other events that we engaged in, the Monmouth Downtown Halloween thing. Over 800 people came through the library for that. There was also the trunk or treat out in the parking lot of the library that was fairly popular. Seed packets. We have a seed library, and I've always felt like this was kind of odd because you give away the seeds, but they don't come back. But anyway, they gave out over 4,500 packets of seeds to people for growing vegetables, herbs, flowers, etc. We've had a Casa Giving Tree. We've done Food for Fines and the Community Food Drive Challenge for the food bank and food pantry. The Youth Services Librarian has expanded partnerships with groups like the Family Building Blocks, the Central School District, of course, and the Mid-Valley Parenting Group. And so there's a lot of community in-gathering and outreach both going on through the library. And the board thinks that the library and the staff do a really good job serving our community. And I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Carol Harding.
Sorry, what did you say?
Carol Harding.
Carol
Yeah.
Harding,
Hello,
thank you.
Carol.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You have questions?
Questions? Very active board, and as always, you guys do a great job, and very nice library. And
Okay.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for reporting this evening, for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, meeting with Arts and Cultural Commission. Oh, handout.
Colorful statistics. I thought, no, black and white.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Chris.
Yeah, don't kill us. For the record. Well, thanks. Welcome. Thank you
To
for
a
being here.
packed house, too. Thank you for allowing us to come in and give reports. And the other two commission members couldn't be here tonight, but their hearts are here, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
could you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry, Judy Mall.
Thank you, Judy.
And I'm the newest one on the commission. Roxanne actually recruited me, and then she ditched me and became a city councilor.
Council,
So
yeah.
we're back to not having a quorum. We're down to 3 people again. The commission, Art and Culture Commission, has existed for 12 years, and it sounds like there have always been some struggles keeping a quorum. And we're at that point right now. We've been recruiting, attempting to recruit, and everyone that I've talked to is either too busy or they've been on the commission before. And they support the idea, but they just don't have time to do it. We have 3 members, as I said, right now. There hasn't been a quorum since September 2018. So we still get together and meet and throw ideas back and forth. The mayor, Cease, is now our commission, or county council, city council member who's our representative. And I guess she couldn't be here tonight either, but
Right, another commitment.
anyway, she has been to 1 meeting, and she has some good ideas about how we can just make the council commission more visible. It's one of our goals. One of the things the commission does is award grants, and let's see, the grants this past year were for Ash Creek Art Center, and they provided art and craft activities during music in the park. And New Horizons Orchestra, they needed some new music, and so we provided $500 for that. The Freedom Dance Company got $400 from the commission to support their work. The previous year, let's see, we gave Sue Mason funding for a potter's wheel, And if you all know Sue Mason, she's very active in displaying art. And Matslin, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the person's name now right, but anyway, this person got funding for the Little Actors Acting Camp. So that was another fun thing to support art and culture. One of the things I am learning more about, we do also purchase artwork from artists on campus, from student artists. And right now we have a $2,000 budget, thanks to the city very much for that. And we spread that between supporting grants and buying art. And one of the things that we did just recently was put together a list of all the art that we have purchased since 2013. And one thing that I think we'll be working on is adding locations to that, so that if people would like to see what their city dollars have been spent on, they'll be able to go around and look at artwork. Sounds like a lot of interesting pieces. Most of them I haven't seen myself. One of the other things we've talked about is redoing this brochure. It's a great brochure. It's a little bit out of date now because things have changed, but it's really a good resource so that people can walk around and see what's going on in our town. Let's see. What the commission is doing right now is really trying to generate some new ideas about how we can work more closely with Independence and the Ash Creek Art Center to kind of expand our range and help promote each other's projects. And there are a lot of things with the university as well, like the Smith Fine Art Series. And I'm surprised how many people don't know about that. And so maybe there's a way we can co-communicate about that to let more people know about what's going on campus. Let's see if there's, I know, I wanted to mention a friend of mine who always picks up these newsletters brought this over to me, and hopefully you all are aware of this, but in the Western Howl, it's the newsletter that comes out through the university, the title is Your City Needs You. And I think Phyllis had a lot to do with getting this in. It's asking for people to volunteer to be on our commissions. So not just the art and culture, but all of the other commissions as well. It gives some general background about the commissions and how people can go about applying. So thank you, Phyllis.
Great.
That was good. You were quoted multiple times there. That was good. I think those are all the things that I wanted to cover. Do you guys have any questions or comments?
Are you down 3 commission members? Is that what you need?
We would
Bill?
have 7, I believe,
7,
and we
so
have
4
3.
actually, then.
So we're down 4. And we need at least 1 more to have a quorum.
quorum,
but
right.
it would really benefit us to have more than that.
Of course.
Because new people bring in new ideas, and also it spreads the labor. We could get out and do a lot more with more people.
Great, correct.
So if you
Yeah.
know of anybody.
Right. Go ahead, Byron.
So what would you say the the mission is of this council? So as you're making decisions, as you're spitballing ideas, what is sort of the guiding principle behind this council to give you some direction as to
Okay.
where to head?
Just happen to have our 5-year plan, which includes our mission. The mission is to encourage opportunities for recognition of art and culture in the city of Monmouth, to make recommendations to the city council regarding all matters involving public arts and cultural development in the city, to provide coordination and communication among groups and individuals engaged in art and cultural activities, including coordination of events showcasing the abilities of local artists, area artists, identify funding sources and help to secure funding as necessary to promote art and culture, identify groups and organizations which could bring art and culture activities and enrichment to the city of Monmouth, develop a 5-year plan for art and cultural activities in the city of Monmouth, subject to approval by the city council. And the plan will include, but not be limited to, proposed capital improvement projects for public art. Provide a liaison and recommendations to the city council and other city commissions and boards regarding projects in the 5-year plan and other approved visual art projects. And the 5-year plan, oh, sorry, I didn't, oh, here it is. Okay. Actually, the 5-year plan repeats quite a few those same things that were in what I just read to you: promoting art and culture, providing opportunities for artistic expression, develop supportive relationships, we talked about that, and identifying funding mechanisms, and integrating art into public spaces. So it pretty much is just consistent with the background on what I just read.
This thought just popped into my head as she was talking about their mission and things like that, and maybe as we're designing the new city hall, we can incorporate space into, you know, being able to fulfill part of their mission, having a public space for stuff on display. That's just a thought.
That would be great. That would really be good. Some of the ideas that we've talked about in our meetings are having art walks, having people go out and actually see art in place. That's one of the reasons for putting together a list of things that we've purchased, and finding just looking at other ways people are promoting art. Like in Salem, they have they have hidden art, and people go around and artists contribute small pieces of art and hide it all around the city, and people find it and they get all excited because they've found a piece of art. The Polk County Folklife Festival as a cultural event is going to be here on March 30th. They used to meet at the fairgrounds, and now they meet at, or have their performances at the Student Center at WU. So that's a good opportunity. And again, we could be co-promoting things like that, getting it on our website or Facebook page. I think we could reach out maybe more broadly by doing that.
Great. Questions for Judy? I've been to a few of their sessions over the years.
Yes,
you guys
you
always do a
have.
great job, so thank you for continuing to do that. We'll see if we can get you some help.
Yeah, we could use at least 4 new people.
Great.
Thank
That
you,
would be
Judy.
good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Judy.
Okay. Looks like we are to citizen comments. So this time is reserved for citizens to comment on items that are not on the agenda. Maximum of 3 minutes per item, please. And I don't know if anything was turned in, Phyllis? No, but you come forward, please.
I noticed that ADUs are on that one page, but you guys aren't speaking about them today, right? Can I speak about ADUs?
Yes, it's the next item.
It's a hearing, yeah.
It's a,
On the
oh,
hearing.
it's a hearing?
It's a hearing, yeah.
Okay, then I'll wait.
We can catch you in that then.
Okay.
Any others? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move to our first business agenda item, which is a public hearing on the legislative amendment 1901, vacation rentals, accessory dwellings, and street trees. Director, please.
Yes. Good evening, Council and Mayor Pro Tem. My name is Suzanne Duffner, Community Development Director of the City of Monmouth. I have the staff presentation for the public hearing tonight. Let's see. Okay, so this is Legislative Amendment 1901. These are 4 proposed amendments to the Monmouth City Code that would address vacation rentals, accessory dwellings, and street trees. The council actually had a work session on draft proposed changes back in December, if you recall, December 5th. And the Planning Commission has actually been working on these amendments probably for the past year, actually. There's been a number of work sessions to kind of go through different iterations and different drafts and address issues as they came up. So these 3 sets of changes to the code came about in response to community concerns that we were hearing, some recent legislative changes, and also just updated industry standards. So that's kind of what prompted them, although we do get into our code routinely to address some housekeeping issues and items that come to our attention that may not be addressed or may not be clear. So just to kind of hit on some of the highlights of each one of those main issues, starting with the short-term vacation rentals. As you're probably aware, these are times where people would rent out their home or their dwelling for a temporary period of time for a vacationer, usually through some kind of online home sharing site like VRBO, Vacation Rental by Owner, or Airbnb. So quite increasing in popularity, and a number of cities have been going through similar code revisions. So we fortunately had a lot of good research at our fingertips to look at, and we did look at a number of other cities and how they've addressed this issue. Currently, Monmouth does not address or allow short-term vacation rentals in our code. Our code is just silent on the issue, and I think we saw some happening during this big total solar eclipse a couple summers ago, and we thought, well, maybe that was a temporary thing, but alas, again, through their popularity, we're hearing that an interest in it, and some people are seeking to do that. So right now, we have provisions for bed and breakfast units, so this is where the innkeeper stays and provides traditionally a breakfast for the guests who are staying there overnight. So those are conditional uses in residential zones. Short-term vacation rentals differ in that they usually don't have the innkeeper staying there, the homeowner, and there's not a meal provided. So the proposed code changes would add short-term vacation rentals as an allowed use in the various residential zones in the city. We tried to strike a balance between providing for some allowance for short-term vacation rentals, recognizing that this can be an amenity or asset to our community by allowing folks to come and visit and have a place to stay in Monmouth, especially with kind of the limited amount of overnight lodging hotels, bed and breakfasts that are available. So this kind of helps expand that and also allows homeowners to, especially those who snowbird, to get a little extra use and income out of their biggest asset, right? Usually is their home. So, but at the same time, the concerns that you hear about these uses is that they can there's a potential for them to alter the character of a neighborhood if the whole neighborhood just becomes vacation rentals. And so places like the coast or Bend, where they have a lot of tourism, tend to wrestle with those issues. But we wanted to make sure there were some standards in place that would again, not take away from the residential character of neighborhoods. So you'll see standards in there about parking, trash disposal, having a local representative on site, point of contact. We developed a 2-track system where if the home is being used for 30 days or less for a vacation rental, it would be a staff level review, and we could review and approve that. If it was more of a longer term use of it as a bed and breakfast, or as a vacation rental, longer term meaning over 30 days per year, those would need to go through planning commission approval through a conditional use permit process. So a little bit more review and comment opportunity from the neighbors. So that was kind of the first set of changes, what they addressed. The second set respond to the accessory dwelling units in Oregon Senate Bill 1051. You may be aware last legislative session, there's a requirement that cities allow accessory dwelling units where single-family residential units are allowed. And then the State Department of Land Conservation and Development, DLCD, came out with recommended guidelines on how to implement that Senate bill. So in reviewing those recommended standards, the city is proposing to make changes to the requirement specifically that one of either the dwelling or the accessory dwelling be owner occupied. The reason for that is that could be a potential barrier to providing this type of housing, and it's simply hard to administer and make sure it can become a code enforcement nightmare to make sure that people are following it and not ignoring that standard. So that's the one change there. And then lastly, there's a proposed change to we have a list of approved street trees that are allowed to go in our city rights of way that are appropriate for those growing conditions. And unfortunately, there is a pest emerald ash borer pest that is spreading across the country, that is killing all the ash trees off. So at least for now, until hopefully there's another way to counter that pest. The foresters and extension office is recommending that cities don't plant new ash trees. Not saying you need to take out the ones that you have by any means, but just don't plant this particular species because they all appear to be impacted. So until we find otherwise, we can always come back and amend our code and add them if something changes. But yeah, so it's kind of in a nutshell the proposed changes. There's some alternatives there for the council consideration to adopt the legislative amendments as recommended by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing last month and recommended adoption with no further changes. Other alternatives to the council, you could adopt it and make changes this evening, or the third option is to take no action on the legislative amendment. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are you going to address Title V, the standards, or the separately?
Oh, I kind of wrapped those into the
okay, all right,
vacation rentals.
okay,
Did you
all
want to
right.
explain
Nope,
why we,
nope.
I can't remember if the council had seen that or not on December 5th. So
Yeah, well, these
why we peeled
actually,
that
I
off.
think these actually reflect several comments that the council made at the workshop that were incorporated into changes presented to the planning commission.
Okay.
And I just to say that all vacation rentals will be subject to the standards, whether or not a conditional use permit
Correct.
is required. So even vacation rental units that are occupied for less than 30 days will still be subject to these standards in terms of neighborhood and you know, just activities and the requirements. So those regulations are all encompassing for vacation rentals.
All right,
have a
go ahead.
Is the 30 days, no more than 30 consecutive days at a time, or is it a 30 days total within a 1 year period?
Within a 1 year period.
Okay.
Yeah, good
And
clarification.
when I stay at Airbnbs, often in the charges, there's a tax or a fee that goes to Airbnb. Do we get any of that back?
So it's a good question. It's a hard one to answer. We are supposed to, yeah. The rules are written such that the short-term vacation rentals are subject to our transit occupancy tax. I believe there's still some issues that we're working through with Airbnb to make sure that the collection is occurring. But
All cities are working with
Yeah.
these vacation rental providers.
Do you think there might be one overarching regulation for the whole state?
Well,
in regard to
if
this, or will it be city by
actually,
city?
the legislature thought they did that.
Oh,
I think 2 years ago, and in fact, we updated our transient lodging tax code to pick up the state amendments, and apparently they're still not
okay,
complying.
thank you.
Intermediaries, that's what they're called.
yes.
Other questions?
What will will there be a cost to register the short-term vacation rentals? And if so, what will that be?
Good question. Yeah, so we haven't set the fee. We don't typically put the fee amounts in the code just because of the process. It's time it takes to amend a code that's usually in a resolution. So I had anticipated that there would be like a small administrative, kind of like our business registration. I think we have a $25 fee or something, just a nominal. Try not to make it too burdensome. But the conditional use permit for the ones that are more than 30, they're using their home more than 30 nights a year, those, we do have a fee set for conditional use permits, and I believe it's somewhere between 500 and 700, I think, to do that application. So,
And how much or how often would those registrations or permits need to be renewed?
I believe I just should probably double check that it's a one-time at that location. So as long as they haven't changed owners or location, that it would be a one-time fee. But if they wanted to say, do it at a different home or residence, they sold that one and went to a different one, then they'd need to get a new permit at that location, so.
Then I do have one more question regarding the accessory dwelling units. The changes to that, is that strictly to bring us into compliance with the standards set by Oregon state law?
So Oregon state law says that you have to allow accessory dwelling units where single-family dwelling units are allowed, and it says that you can only enact reasonable standards for accessory dwelling units. They didn't really define what's reasonable and what's not reasonable, so we're went pending. I guess people will test that out, right? And courts will tell us what the boundaries of that are. So the owner occupancy requirement came from the state planning agency, who are, the so-called experts on planning issues, and what their recommendations are, was to take that out as a potential barrier to providing this type of housing. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's black and white state requirement to not have that owner occupancy requirement, but they recommend per their guidelines, kind of as a safe harbor, not to have it. If that makes sense.
Did they say why?
Yeah, so the reason given is that, again, that having those extra standards may discourage people from building or doing this type of housing. And the whole reason why that Senate bill was passed was to try to encourage more housing, especially housing that's affordable, right, to people to help meet that housing shortage crisis. So that was the one reason given, and then the other was just the difficulty in enforcing on that type of a code standard, that it can, be difficult to make sure people are following that and become kind of a code nightmare in terms of trying to enforce on that. So kind of two reasons they gave for that.
So, and I guess, I mean, I had this question last time. How does this not simply turning single-family low density into duplexes?
So there are limits on, so accessory dwelling unit would be a second dwelling unit allowed on a property where a single family is, but there are still limitations on the size of how big they can be, how much square footage they can take up of the lot. So just like they sound, they're accessory to the primary residence on the house, so they don't take away from the overall character as a single family. So there's, for example, a requirement that there be one off-street parking space provided for the secondary dwelling, and that it can't be, I think it's more than 40% of the floor area of the single-family home. So, yeah.
And if you think that's a step in that direction, Senate Bill 2001 this
Goes
session,
further.
which seems to have legs, would require cities to allow duplexes and triplexes in all single-family zoned areas. So you wouldn't have essentially a single-family zoned anymore. And that would override local regulations.
Okay. This would not result in a separate address, correct? Would it be a second address at this?
Yeah, I mean, we can issue it as a second address if that's requested. They've gone through the legal, they can't just say, oh, I'm going to convert my garage to an accessory dwelling unit without coming in for permits for that. So they need to do it in accordance with, safe building code standards to make sure that it's a safe, habitable dwelling. And as part of that review, for emergency responder purposes, we want to actually have more direct location on how to find people. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Can I just ask one question? Is it Senate Bill
2001, yes.
Is that for all cities?
I'm sorry,
of all
House, it's how,
1051.
Assembly?
Huh?
For the
whole
new
state.
one?
It's House bill.
I don't
It's House
know.
bill.
For the
2001?
triplex? and-
You know, I can't remember what the numbers are. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's got legs.
So, but it's for every city regardless
Yes.
of the size of the
Oh, well,
city?
I think there are some amendments
Might
proposed.
be like over 10,000.
Yeah, we would be still
course.
within
We'd be
it.
like-
There were some amendments that I think are giving an exemption to smaller cities, maybe under 10 or under 5, I forget. But we would fall within the mandate.
Mhm, okay, thank you.
Any other counselor questions?
Not for this group, for my legislators, yeah, but not for this.
It's House Bill 2001. The 2000s is where the House bills start.
So let me open the hearing then. We'll do that. And I know we have at least one question, comment, or something for us. Please come forward. Name and city for the record.
My name is Holly Tangeman, and I am a property owner and a realtor. I always like to say that, so I'm coming from a couple of different directions. I also have had the honor of serving on some of the audit boards for other municipalities that have to do with land development code, and through those audits, we've talked a lot about accessory dwelling units, not only in Corvallis, but also Albany and on. So a couple of the things that I see that I would like to bring up is that I believe that some of our language is not clear and objective when it comes to the standards. I know that looking at other municipalities, their language as to maybe we're talking about, roofs, building materials, window appearance, view windows, color, balconies, walkways, entrance doors, they're much more detailed, which I believe is going to be essential so that we don't have schlocky stuff built. And I know a lot of our existing primary residences are older. So my concern as a property owner and somebody who loves Monmouth is how do we go forward to make sure that we have more language and more standards so that when those ADUs are approved and permitted, that actually the product that is used on them and the roofing material and all of that does match, and that it's bringing up what we already have. We have a lot of older homes that don't look so great. But most municipalities are really requiring that those homes look, they are to building standards as of today. And they also have language in there whether they will approve manufactured homes or not. There's just a lot missing in our language. And I really, really think that we should look at that very carefully and add what we need to add to protect our setbacks and everything else with balconies and this and that really isn't addressed.
Okay, questions for Holly before she leaves? Any? Okay, thank you so much, Holly.
You bet.
Others that have questions or comments? Hearing none, then I'll close the hearing. And now, council comments after that? Or staff comments also, Suzanne, if you have any?
What about the little bitty houses? Are they considered an accessory dwelling?
They could be.
Tiny homes.
It depends on the size of them. So accessory dwelling units shall not contain less than 300 square feet and not more than 800 square feet. So there's some actually tiny homes that are smaller than 300 square feet, so those would not be allowed.
Not teeny tiny homes.
Yeah.
It also depends on the square footage of the lot too, whether it can be a standalone.
Correct. If it has to be inside the dwelling, or whether or not it has to be a larger lot. I think it was
Or replacing a
500
separate.
square feet if they want to do it detached or separate unit. Mhm.
And if I may, I want to respond to the comments, and I'll let Suzanne, this is just I'd not heard these comments before, but my immediate reaction is that we don't have particularly stringent standards with regard to building materials and those kinds of things in the code currently. And I would be concerned that to create standards that apply only to ADUs that are more stringent than what apply to our building dwelling, to our building requirements now, could be seen as a barrier to an ADU. It would be cleaner if you wanted, I think, to get into a clearer and more detailed code in terms of building materials and aesthetics and those kinds of things, generally clear and objective. But I would be a little uncomfortable, I think, in applying those criteria and standards to ADUs and not to dwellings, just because that could be seen, I think, and Suzanne, I welcome your comments. It's just my gut tells me that could be seen as a barrier to ADUs, where we're creating higher standards for building materials and appearances for those than we do for our stick-built dwellings or our single-family dwellings.
And that's, as I was just reading the recommended guidelines from DLCD, that was pretty good. Did you
Was
help
that
them
right?
write
No,
that?
no.
Yeah.
I used to be the director of the agency, so I was glad.
Yeah, it does talk about requirements, they don't recommend any special design standards for ADUs, because again, it can serve as additional barriers and sometimes backfire if the design and materials of the proposed ADU would have been of superior quality, those of the primary dwelling had been allowed. So, yeah, it's kind of a tough nut to crack. I mean, I totally get the concern for historic homes, and, you know, those are sometimes the areas under the most pressure, right, for infill and redevelopment. But I think a better way to address the historic concern, at least, is through the possible creation of historic district, and then we can get into very specific crafting of design standards that's compatible with those particular neighborhoods. And then, you know, there's a time old, you know, while this is a code, it's something that we monitor and review, and we're going through a housing needs analysis right now to get some further feedback and direction on our housing development for the next 20 years. And as part of that plan update, we certainly want to dig further into our code, our housing standards, to make sure there aren't other barriers. And if there are, when we bring in the code experts, maybe they'll have ideas on how to make some of these things more clear and objective. So I don't see this as being the end all. I think this is our set of Band-Aid code changes that we keep putting on this old code to try to make it a little more bearable in the interim until we can do that larger overhaul. And I would love Holly's expertise to review that with us as we go forward, to see some of those other city examples of what's working well in other cities.
Is there a particular place that fits well in the future scope? So, I mean, not tomorrow night's meeting, we got a presentation tomorrow night for housing needs, right? And
Right.
so it'd be more in front of the planning commission and that process, I would think, so.
Yeah, we're kind of on our next fiscal year work plan is when we hope to get into the code assistance program to get some grant funding to hire someone to help us with that. But tomorrow night will be a kind of a good lead in on what folks in the community that are familiar with our code and our neighborhoods and development, you know, what are some of those, identifying those issues and bringing them to our attention. So, yep. Good.
Okay.
So I assume these changes, though, are incorporate the current codes and current
Sure.
standards that we have
Sure.
into these ADUs, right? So
Yeah.
they're not gonna be any higher or any lower than the
Right.
current building standards that we have, and offsets like she was talking about and things like that.
Oh, yeah, we already have setbacks, and I didn't, for brevity's sake, and saving trees, I didn't print all the other sections that already still apply, so I'm sorry if that wasn't clear, but yeah, we definitely do have setbacks and building code requirements that will apply to these units, and
So, assuming this all happens, what kind of impact can this have on city revenue as far as, you know, a separate tax lot somehow, you know, whether that's
Can't divide it.
positive or negative, as far as, you know, the impact of surrounding properties, that type of thing? I mean,
It has
has
to
anybody
be-
projected the impact of the value of these properties?
no, but I'm not aware of that kind of a fiscal impact calculation, if that's what you're referring to, but I just want to clarify, so these ADUs or accessory dwelling units are on the same tax lot in the same lot as the house. You can't divide them off as a separate lot.
No, and I understand that, but, you know, from a development perspective, they're gonna be using more services. And so, you know, how are we gonna offset that expense of more people with the same tax base that we have?
I don't know the answer specifically. There is an answer, and it is in Measure 50, where, you know, we're limited to 3% a year growth. There is an exception for new construction. And there's a threshold for when that exception is triggered, where you actually then can reset the value of a property. I think on a zone change, on a partition, new construction, annexation, I think is another example. And new construction is one where you can reset that. You don't reset it to market, it goes to a weird blended formula. But again, nothing we do here will affect that because it's already in the tax law. But there may very well be circumstances where an ADU would trigger that new construction exception that would put that extra value, or at least a portion of it, on the tax roll to be paid in property tax.
Yeah, 'cause I mean, if you have, 10% of the homes in the city, all of a sudden, they're now duplexes, and you add another couple of thousand bodies here, you're gonna consume more resources, you're gonna consume more services, yet your tax base has stayed the same. So,
Well, and again, prepare yourself under House Bill 2001, we're also prohibited from collecting SDCs on duplexes and triplexes up front, as a barrier, I guess, to providing those kinds of dwelling units, so.
Well, an interesting comment with ADUs or the next one. The other one is capacity. You've designed a street, let's just take a street that has X water line, sewer line, electrical system to take care of X houses. If you double the houses, it might not work. And that was kind of flagged, and a lot of stuff is underground, so you're talking potentially ripping up streets. And then the city now having to put in, new systems, which would be very expensive to do. And I think one of the comments from the housing advocates when that was pointed out was, oh, it'll all work out.
But I think the point with the ADUs is that they're small enough that impact is a lot less than say a triplex. I mean, I understand exactly what you're talking about, that there is some more impacts to the system, but the whole point with allowing the ADU is that they're small enough, they're usually tying into the same water and sewer service. I'm not sure about the electrical, if it's a separate meter or not, but, so they will be paying more, in terms of usage fees for those utilities. And to Lane's point about the property taxes, all of our building permits go to the assessor's office, so they know if there's been a building improvement or increased value to those sites, they flag those to take a look at that. So depending on how that property tax law is written, there could be additional tax revenue that's generated as a result of that.
I mean, my biggest concern here is I thought I was living in a single-family, low-density neighborhood, and then all of a sudden, I'm surrounded by duplexes.
Sure.
And so, then I have two choices. I either move out of the city or.
But conversely, looking at it from the other point of view, so say you have an aging mother-in-law or mom, grandma is not able to take care of herself and she's not ready to go to the nursing home or doesn't want to, this would be another opportunity for that person to have some independence and still live by, the caretaker. So, I mean, that's kind of more of a family example, but there are definitely people that need, not everybody can afford the single-family detached dwelling or even, 3-bedroom apartment. So that's kind of where the need, issue comes at. But yeah, it's always tricky to balance them.
But in the event, that policy discussion has happened across the river.
Great. Good discussion. Any other? We have a proposed motion if we are ready or not. Are there any modifications?
I have a question. What
Okay.
does this motion do?
This
For sure.
motion directs me to work with Suzanne to bring back an ordinance that then adopts these amendments into your code.
So why are they all rolled into one amendment as opposed to separate? So I can vote yes on one and no on another, that type of thing.
Tradition.
If I.
Right. Some anyway. For efficiency's sake, we have to give notice in the newspaper, and there's a fee for the notices. So we'll usually roll a series of code changes into one and process them together if we can. But you certainly, under
Yeah,
alternative
right.
2, have the option to
Break them out.
change one. I mean, that's, just because they're presented all as 3 doesn't mean you have to adopt them all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could split the motion, I guess, basically.
But we don't need to do that tonight.
Well, you
Probably
would,
would
because
need to
if
do it
you, if
tonight
this
if we're
motion
going to.
passes to prepare an ordinance, then I would bring back an ordinance that has all of these baked into it.
Yeah, we want them separated, we need to do it now.
Yeah.
I just don't know how much good it's gonna do. I mean, if our hands are tied, our hands are tied, right?
Which one you're concerned about, Byron?
The ADU thing.
Oh. Yeah, you can break that out. I mean, I guess then we would be in a place where we'd be subject to a challenge, I suppose, that the owner-occupied requirement constitutes an unreasonable burden or barrier. It would be up to somebody to bring a challenge to establish that. So it's, you know, I wouldn't say that we would be clearly in violation of state law. We do have guidelines from the department that those provisions should come out of the code, but those are only guidelines. They're not administrative rule, they're not statute. And if you wanted to say, no, we won't change that until somebody tells us we have to change it, you know, you could do that. I think Suzanne and the Planning Commission is just anticipating where the policy is going, and based on advice of the state department, which does have some, you know, some weight to it, as appropriately brought this to you, but I can't tell you that you have to do it.
I would just add to that too, it also came from actual property owners that have investment properties that have wanted to do these, but because of the owner occupancy, yeah, so it's not, yeah, there have been, you know, a half dozen, or well, actually less than a half dozen that have expressed an interest in doing that.
The bottom line, if you wanted to have a motion to prepare an ordinance on the short-term rentals and the site, and the street trees, we could put that in one ordinance, and you could make a separate motion, or not, on the ADUs. It's all up to you.
So, for clarity, we could request that you prepare three different amendments,
Technically.
and then we could take a look at them
Or even
again
just
as a
two,
full
right?
council.
Or
just
four.
two.
Yeah.
Or four.
You-
Four is
yeah,
an option.
Yeah, but I would assume that the short-term rentals would probably go in one, both the development code and the Title V, since they're really connected, but yeah. If you wanted to split them, that would be the logical split. One would be to direct an ordinance on the development code and Title V amendments relating to short-term rentals. Another would be an ordinance on the street trees, and another would be an ordinance on ADUs. Up to you.
So,
You taking motions?
I am, yes, I am.
I move to direct staff to prepare the three separate amendments
Let's take one motion at a time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. Then I move that we direct staff to prepare an ordinance to adopt, and I'm sorry, I don't have the language
That's
here,
okay.
but just the ADU,
Okay.
the ADU issue separately.
Could we do the vacation rentals and the trees together?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
okay
you
with
could,
that.
yeah. Okay, so this motion would just be the ADUs.
ADUs.
Just the ADUs.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Okay, I'm ready for another motion.
I will move yet again to direct staff to prepare an ordinance for the remaining amendments to the code. Would this still be legislative amendment 1901?
Yeah.
That how-
I don't think that so much matters for the
Okay.
ordinance, yeah. You just tell us that it relates to short-term vacation rentals and street trees.
I so move to direct staff to draft an ordinance on short-term vacation rentals and street trees.
Second.
Second, okay, very good. Moved and seconded. Any other discussion on this one? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions? Okay, passes. Phyllis? Okay, thank you so much. for
Yeah.
being Flexible.
I'm just,
Yes.
Suzanne will have to prepare 2 staff reports, but you just, it's all
like,
there
it's
already,
all
I just
right.
split it, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Super. Okay. Okay, this next one, adopting 2019-2020 council goals. Since we're missing several people, I would like to delay that one till we've got everybody here. Seems like with only roughly half of us here, it doesn't feel quite right to me, because they were all part of that and would like to do it. So if there's no concerns with that, we've got really till July 1, is that right? It's when they become effective, so we got lots of time. So I'd like to
We'll
have
get
everybody
it
here,
done.
so either the next meeting or whenever we have folks here, next couple of meetings. That would be super. Okay, thank you so much on that one.
Do you need a motion to table?
No, I think you can just carry it on to the next
Carry
agenda. Yeah, it really
We're
hasn't
so
come up.
casual here.
Yeah,
We are.
Without
Like on-
objection, bang.
Like small board rules or something tonight, so, okay.
You mean making it up as we go along?
Maybe. I was trying to say it nicely, but
An adhocracy.
yeah, yep. Okay,
You're good.
moving to our third agenda item on the business agenda then. First reading of ordinance amending chapter 910 of the Monmouth City Code regarding drug paraphernalia and declaring an emergency based on our new business coming into town and our marijuana businesses as well. So thank you, Scott, for taking this one.
Yeah, so the idea here is that back in 2011, we basically had a situation where kind of smoking devices were put into convenience stores. And people said, that's not really appropriate because the kid's just there, they don't need to necessarily see that. So those things had to be behind, basically, covered, just out of sight, essentially. And then just recently, we had a smoke shop coming in. So the whole point of a smoke shop is smoking and devices, so that didn't make sense to have them all hidden. And so we said, okay, we'll try to respond to that. We have a business coming into town trying to help them out to get going. This is actually hindering their opening by having these rules. And at the same time, we noticed we also have marijuana-based businesses that also have devices and smoking and things. And so that, they've actually been out of compliance with this, with how we get that cleaned up too. So the intent of the ordinance is to maintain the original, is, keep it out of the convenience stores where children, but in the case of a smoke shop, you're just there to buy a smoking product, have to be 18. And then in marijuana stores, you actually have to be 21, so you're not going to be seen there. So we set those rules up. Council supported that at our last meeting. We did run this as a first reading tonight, then it'd be second reading at a subsequent meeting, and then deferring the 30 days just to get it in a little bit quicker. We found out that the smoke shop, which was kind of the driver of the, they're trying to get done quicker, probably isn't going to go in. So if you'd like to do it just to get things cleaned up quicker, if you want to run it regular, it's probably fine. So you can just not have the emergency.
But it's already drafted with an emergency.
Emergency on it.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry, did I just hear you say the smoke shop isn't going to be opening for business?
Probably not. We've got indications that they decided not to.
Oh, okay. The legislature recently passed a law that you have to be 21
Yeah, it
to
is
smoke
21 now.
tobacco,
Mhm.
but you can go into a smoke shop if you're 18.
You can, but you don't have the.
Can't buy
You
anything.
can't buy anything,
You
yeah.
can go and look around.
Yeah, so,
Or you can't buy tobacco.
yeah, well, that's right, you can't buy tobacco, that's right, but in most smoke shop, that's about all they sell.
Thanks.
Okay. Questions?
For clarity, this would still prevent the display of paraphernalia to anyone that's not physically standing inside the building. So you wouldn't be able to see it from the street in a display window or anything like that. Okay.
Good. Seems like it's consistent still with what we originally had otherwise, and now allowing for the changes.
Yeah, and then the big one here is just times change. So this is a case where we had an original ordinance, took care of what was needed. Now we've had some shifts in society and how products are consumed and used, and so we're definitely.
And if I may, I think the emergency still is in order, just because you do have businesses that are lawfully operating that in fact are out of compliance with their code, so
It'd be nice, yeah.
let's get this fixed.
Makes sense to me to keep it the way it is.
And we did the first reading second, so if somebody was interested and they hear about this and they want to come to the second reading, they got that opportunity. That's one reason why we do this one on, still a two-step process.
Excellent. So if there aren't any other questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Do we need a motion for the reading?
You think just declare that it's passed.
Declare it
first
passed first reading? Well, I can do that, by golly. Okay, thank you so much for the clarification there. Let's see, we've got one more, right? So we got first reading of ordinance for street vacation, 1801, the 1500 block of Monmouth Independence Highway. So that's the S curves, right? Director Duffner again. Thank you.
Different report. Okay, so we had a public hearing, or City Council had a public hearing on proposed street right-of-way vacation on January 8th, and the council voted to approve the request. This was for an old alley that's undeveloped and a platted old street that was the former passenger rail right-of-way between Independence and Monmouth. That's no longer needed for street purposes. So this is the ordinance that would formally adopt that action to approve the request, and it's to help facilitate the proposed commercial development on the Ash
And
Creek Station.
it reserves our easements for
Correct.
utility purposes.
Yes, we do have utilities, overhead power, water line in those, so there's reservations for easement to make sure we still have access to those utilities.
Great. And we've got all those, even though some of them were in a long time ago, we know where they're at and all that kind of stuff, so we're in good shape.
Right,
No surprises or?
yeah, the easement, or the reservation actually covers the entire area that's being vacated, so,
perfect.
yeah, we'll
Good.
cover that.
Good. Okay, questions?
Is there any room for, in our conversations with the developers, to just make a casual request that if they do find any relics from that railroad that was originally in one of the locations that's being vacated, that they share them with the Historic Commission?
Yep, we've already done that through the
Okay,
pre-app. What the Historic Commission told me was that was it the steel gauge rail? It was valuable, so it's all been ripped up and removed from what they know, but there could be stakes or some other kind of items. You never know what you can.
When you start digging, you never know what you're going to find.
Absolutely. So, yep, they seemed amenable to that request, so that'd be great. Thank you for pointing that out.
Excellent.
I think we've had lots of discussion on this so
This
far,
one,
so.
okay, so I can declare this one our first reading,
Yep.
right? So done. Okay, thank you again. Okay, I think we are now at council comments. Yep, that's what it says. Do we have council comments?
I do. This morning I attended the Polk County Commissioners meeting, and they had a presentation on the homelessness issue in our area. Janet Carlson and Sean O'Day from the Mid-Willamette Council of Governments were there. And they just, you may remember that we donated $5,000 to the effort in a multi-jurisdictional effort last year, and we got a very nice and comprehensive list of all the agencies in that area that provide services to homeless people. But then, unfortunately, the person that we hired left. So the Council of Governments wants to continue the effort that we're having with taking care of the homeless problem, and they primarily want to write or get money from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development for what's called a continuum of care. That is an overarching plan to deal with these kinds of problems between constituencies. There is also something called the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. That's a federal act that they want to apply for, and they want this money primarily for the purpose of developing a long-term plan, a strategic plan for how we will deal with homelessness in our area, and to get, and also to apply for a grant. There's assistance through HUD, and then there are grants that can be applied for as well. They don't know how to approach the different governmental entities in this area. They They proposed that it might be a Polk County, Marion County, Yamhill, Salem, West Salem, Kaiser, Independence, Monmouth, and Dallas organization to go in and all together to apply for this HUD funding. And it's a lot of work that they would need to do. Unfortunately, since we started on this, there's been an increase in homelessness. And they want to get started on it as soon as possible. The three commissioners, however, were in unanimous agreement that they did not want to be part of this. They wanted to have more local control over what goes on in terms of solving the problem with homeless people in their community. And so if they come to approach us, the COG comes to talk to us, we may have to make the decision, since Polk County has already said they don't want to be part of it, part of a continuum of care with the other counties, we may have to decide whether or not we want to be in a continuum of care with, since Dallas voted against it before, a continuum of care with Independence and then Kaiser, Salem, and Marion or Yamhill County. So that's just a little heads up for all of you to be thinking about that. And I don't know if they're planning to come. Do you have them on your radar? No. Okay. Okay. So just to let you know about that. And also, I was going to say something about sidewalks. Last June, we were approached by two people who told us, one said that their basketball hoops are blocking sidewalks in Monmouth as a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And several other people have told us that they've had to dip into their life savings to pay to repair the sidewalks in front of their houses. So I would like to point out that it has been now 262 days of inaction on the part of this council to deal with those problems. Thank you.
Okay. I think we're getting close on our sidewalk report, so we'll look forward to that. And at that point, we'll hopefully start addressing that issue. Okay, any other council comments?
A question on the sidewalks. We had mentioned, or Scott had mentioned that was forthcoming. What is the time horizon on that?
Possibly within a month.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
You have a max on that?
300 days, you never know.
You have a max on that? It'll take no longer than,
It's just working through what we're still kind of going through iterations, trying to figure out how we can make it work. So I don't have that, no. Still just kind of in process.
Okay. If there's no other business, I entertain a motion for adjournment.
so moved.
Okay.
Seconded?
Seconded, okay. All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.